Are you interested in starting out the new year with a new smartphone? You might be interested in checking out the Xperia Pro-I. ZDNet's Matt Miller has been playing around with this device, testing it out. Matt, what are your initial thoughts? Tell us about this device.
Yeah, so it's been a while. I used to be a huge Sony Xperia phone fan, and back in the day, it was one of the first ones that was water resistant and all this stuff. But it's been a while since I've tried one out, and I've been using this one for the past couple of weeks. And if you look at the back of it, you might be like, "Wow, that's a little bit different." Because what's that big thing in the middle? And the eye is for imaging. This is a camera focused phone, and that big circle in the back is their 1 inch Sony Exmor sensor. So this is a typical Sony phone. It's a 21:9 display, so it's long, which actually makes it very nice to hold on to. Um, but it's very focused on the media, the gaming, and the cameras and things like that. So just kind of some of the basics. It's available in only one color, frosted black, and it's a matte finish, the Gorilla Glass Victus on the front there. Um, and I talked a little bit about the display, 21:9, but it's also a 4K OLED. And Sony's always kind of focused on really great displays, has the 120 hertz refresh rate and all of that. The one thing is the brightness isn't that great. I think it's about 600 nits, whereas we see things like the iPhone 13 Pro Max is over 1,000. So I'll talk about a couple of the unfortunate things. One of them is the display. It's brilliant and great, except for if you're outside in like full sun and things, it can be a little bit hard to see. Um, Typical Sony, IP68 dust water resistant, so you can use it outside and things. It is pretty loaded. It has 12 gigs of RAM, 512 internal, and then Snapdragon 888. A couple things that kind of are the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which we don't rarely see anymore on phones. It has a micro SD card, and the kind of nice thing about the micro SD and the SIM card is tool to take it out. You could just use your fingernail and pop out the tray and swap it out and things like that. It also has a notification light on front, which has been a long time since we've seen phones with notification lights. So you can turn that on and off, and it'll subtly give you different colors when a notification comes in, so you don't have to pick up the phone and look at it and stuff. So other than that, it's a pretty typical flagship phone, right? All the things that you see. The one thing, as I mentioned early on, it's focused on the camera. So there's 3 cameras in the back, and you might think, oh, they must be stunning, amazing cameras. Well, they are good, but they're Sony cameras, and Sony makes the cameras and the sensors for most smartphones nowadays, actually. But these are 3 Sonys. They're 12 megapixel. So at first glance, it might be that not that impressive. The middle one, as I said, has the 1 inch sensor. It could shoot 20 megapixels. It bends it down to 12 megapixels. So just looking at the hardware itself, it doesn't seem anything remarkable. All the magic and everything is really in the dual aperture, big 1 inch sensor and the software, right? So there's the Zeiss Tessar optics in there, but then you have some pretty advanced camera software. So there's a Cinema Pro, Videography Pro, and Photo Pro apps. And I'll take screenshots and have that in my review, but this is not your point and shoot camera for the newbie, right? It does have a basic mode, and that is pretty much the same as what you see on any other phone, right? The point and shoots kind of phones. But this is really something that you have to spend a lot of time with, because there's several manual modes. And what they've done is they've taken the Sony Alpha cameras, which are the standalone cameras that they have, and it has that Sony Alpha camera interface on here. So if you like the Sony Alpha cameras and you want a phone that kind of matches that experience, jump in here. But you can spend a lot of time exploring all of the different manual settings, the auto tracking, the auto focusing. There's a lot in here. And that's what's taking me so long to get through this review, is just kind of explore all the manual modes that are in this. One thing that's kind of cool too is Sony offers what's called a vlog monitor accessory. I don't have that here, but what it is, it's a gimbal thing on one end, has a microphone and actually a little screen. So what you do is you hook it all up, and then you can shoot vlogs or selfie videos with the rear camera, so you get a better quality than the 8 megapixel front facing, and it has a display, so you can see everything that's being recorded right there. So that's kind of a cool accessory. I think it's like $300 or something like that. And speaking of price, this phone is $1,800. So it is a very expensive phone. And before I move on here, one thing to note is, what don't I like about this phone? I'll just tell you right now, it's not perfect. It has no wireless charging, which is kind of a staple nowadays. One thing that's disappointing to me as a camera phone is it has very limited zoom. We've seen a lot of phones now with a periscope zoom that can go telephoto out to 10, 20x. This one is a very typical 12 megapixel. I think it's 2 or 3x. It's not anything that you would really expect from a phone that's so focused on the camera experience. I was expecting a periscope zoom type of camera. That's kind of the cons of it,
Like you said, this looks like, a decent smartphone, but it is priced really high. And the camera is definitely being marketed towards a very specific group of individuals. Who is this phone being marketed towards? Who's going to buy this device?
It's a good question. We talk about sometimes niche phones like my foldable that I have and things like that. This is even more niche than the Z Fold 3, I would say. This is really a very specific customer. I mean, you can get an iPhone 13 Pro, you can get a Pixel 6 Pro. Those are great. Grab it, turn on the camera, start taking photos. This one, I'm doing some comparisons still on that. The other ones are comparable with the grab it, point and shoot. This is really for people that like the manual mode and want fine control over every aspect of the photography experience. So it's probably somebody that owns a Sony Alpha camera that wants that same experience on a more portable that's always in their pocket and with them, and actually can connect to those Sony Alpha cameras and serve as a viewfinder for them and things like that. So there is some integration, but it's very specific, I think, to people who want to spend the time to really dive into those manual modes. And maybe it's somebody, who's starting out in photography and wants that with them all the time on their phone, but it's going to be a tough sell at $1,800. I don't see this being a huge market for Sony, but it's interesting. They're trying to push in the photography ways and things like that, right? And one other thing I mentioned earlier, it also is a great gaming phone, right? It has the Sony, the PlayStation kind of integration with it and things like that. So there are some of those, but it's a niche market for sure, and definitely not one that I'll be buying. I'll be testing it out and then sending it back, and that's about it. Because I'm a more of a point and shoot type of guy. I don't spend a lot of time diving into all the details.
All right, Matt, thank you so much for testing out this device. The cameras itself look really interesting. It looks like if that's something you're really into, you should check it out for yourself. We have Matt's full review linked down below, along with a link directly to the Xperia Pro-I. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stick with ZDNet for all things smartphones.